What if Bethlehem is in Virgin, Utah? Okay, I'm going to totally wing this video. I'm going off of memory, so it's probably not going to be super cohesive, but here we go. Okay, this is why I'm thinking Bethlehem could be in Virgin, Utah. Please excuse my appearance. I have been staining decks all day and I'm a mess. Okay, what we know about Bethlehem. So we know King David was from Bethlehem. We know where King David's city was, where the city of David was, and where Zion was. So basically, Zion National Park in Springdale. Virgin is just slightly west of that, like maybe 10 miles. Not far at all. So that makes sense. We also know Ruth went from Moab and moved to Bethlehem. And Moab is further east, but in that same southern region. So that also kind of just makes sense location and distance-wise. Nothing super detailed there, but it makes sense. We know Boaz, who Ruth went to, was a big farmer, had crops and barley. I will touch on that more later because that has to do with the irrigation. And then we know that Rachel died in childbirth on the side of the road while they were traveling from Bethel to Bethlehem, which is a tragic story, by the way. I just reread that. Don't go read that if you are in a fragile emotional state. That's a really, really sad story. Anyway, she died on the side of the road from leaving Bethel, going to Bethlehem. They were almost to Bethlehem. She went into labor and died. I'm not 100% sure where Bethel was yet, but it's looking like Bethel was either in Zion or very near to Zion or the city of David. Okay, so this is wild. And when people I actually know in real life find these videos, I'm in so much trouble because they're going to think I'm nuts. Maybe I am. But if you take the road from Springdale, Utah to Virgin, Utah, on the side of the road, right before you get to Virgin or Bethlehem, there is this weird little place called Duncan's Retreat. And I think that's where Rachel is buried. So the Bible says that, not Joseph's her son, I get him mixed up. Jacob, her husband, buried her on the side of the road and erected a monument up off the road slightly in her honor. In memory of, or to mark her grave. And then in one of the Apocrypha books, again, I'm going off of memory, I don't remember if it's Jasher or Jubilee, one of those books, it gives a little more detail about that. And it says more specifically, she died and they buried her along the side of the road. And in his grief, he erected a monument that was a tall, flat stone, and it was set up off the side of the road, so it was above the grave a little ways. Now, if you look at this weird place on the map, you can tell the new road is, the paved road's built a little higher, then the gravel road's a little bit lower and runs along the creek. So I'm guessing originally the original road was a little bit lower than the current road. And so she would have been buried somewhere on the side of the road. And then just up the slope from that is this Duncan's Retreat place. And what do you know? There's a tall, flat stone. Big, white, tall, flat stone standing there. And there is a grave there. It's the gravesite of the first woman pioneer to die. I'm paraphrasing really bad, but her name is there, and it could be her grave, but I do find that intriguing that, that this is this singular grave of the first woman pioneer to die on the side of the road. And then there's this big, tall, flat stone standing up there. Just shortly before you get to Bethlehem. So anyway, I find that really intriguing. Okay, and then what else do we know? So we know, there were shepherds in the baby Jesus story. So there would have been lots of sheep herds. In the town of Virgin, there is a historic little park called Sheepbridge Park, which is where they used to take all the sheep across the river on the sheep bridge. So we know there were plenty of shepherds in this area. It was a big place for raising sheep. back to the crops thing. So we know there was a well in Bethlehem because King David, he was out fighting the bad guys, and he said, I just want to drink water from the well back home in Bethlehem. And I looked up the word. I was looking for like an artesianal well or spring, but I looked up the word and it actually means well, like a dug well. You call that a cistern maybe? But like a dug well that you dig down into the ground. So it actually means that specific kind of well. So if you pull up all the like municipal city like water reports and USGS and stuff like that, there's not any like natural drinking water sources in that area. In fact, it's pretty dry. Which brings me back to the point about the Virgin River. They would have been able to, it was a big farming area in the biblical times, and they would have been able to irrigate the fields with the Virgin River. And it makes a lot of sense that they would have dug wells for drinking water, because there weren't any other water sources really except for the Virgin River, which is kind of can get muddy and stuff. It's not like it's a big spring-fed river necessarily. Anyway, so we have all that. And then the other thing is we know Mary and Joseph went from Nazareth to Bethlehem. We know Nazareth was in Galilee. I'm 90% sure I have Nazareth pinpointed, but I'm still working on it. Regardless, we know where Galilee is. It's Lake Utah. So they would have gone from the area of Galilee down to Bethlehem or Virgin. And it's a straight shot on Interstate 15. Now, Interstate 15 is one of the main roads found in the Bible. It's talked about in Isaiah. I'll have to pull up the exact verse. But it's an ancient road, and it went through there. It still goes through there. You can also see it on old maps, like from the 1700s and stuff. Old Spanish maps. So it makes sense why they would have gone from Nazareth to Bethlehem for the census, because it would have been travel-wise, it would make sense. It would be a straight shot down the interstate. Okay, and, Egypt. So we know where the Egyptian border is. So they were near the Egyptian border, and we know Mary and Joseph fled during the night and crossed the border. It's because the bad guy was trying to kill all the baby boys, right? So they fled, crossed the border into Egypt during the night. So they're close. This virgin is close enough to the Egyptian border that they could have done that. Okay, the other thing we know is Rachel's son was... I have to think Technicolor Dreamcoat to remember. Joseph. I get Jacob and Joseph's names mixed up. Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. So Joseph was Rachel's son. And he was kidnapped, I guess? I don't know. Or sold. I don't know. He was taken from, I think, Shechem. I'm going off of memory here. To Egypt. So the Bible implies Shechem was north of Hebron. We know where Hebron is, and it's just slightly north of Virgin, and a little bit west. So Shechem would have been a little bit above that. And so when Joseph was taken from Shechem to Egypt, on the way, they passed his mother's grave on the side of the road. And poor kid, lost it, started bawling, because not only was he being sold into slavery, then he passed his own mother's grave. I told you, it's a really sad story. But he got like a really cool coat and a whole musical out of the deal, so I don't know, I guess it evens out. Okay, I'm getting slap happy. Okay, so he traveled from Shechem to Egypt, and that road goes down here. They would have passed Rachel's grave, gone down to Egypt. Okay, I think I covered all the points. Oh, well, never mind how ironic it is that the place where the Virgin Mary gave birth is called Virgin. It's just, you can't make that up. It's the town of Virgin, in the county of Virgin, on the Virgin River. Anyway, let me know if you want me to make a better video. I can try to illustrate what I'm talking about and explain it better. Again, I was just going off of memory, kind of rambling. Sorry if this doesn't make a ton of sense, but hopefully you can kind of sort of understand where I'm coming from with this. Let me know what questions you have in the comments.